I'm a beta from the wrong side of the tracks, and I'm obsessed with money. I lucked out and found a rich, top-tier alpha, and when his rut hit, I took advantage. After getting knocked up, I cleaned him out and skipped town. A few years later, a little kid stopped me in my tracks. The kid looked up at me. You look so familiar. You'd be a perfect wife for my daddy. When the kid blocked my path, my first thought was how cute he was. After I teased him a bit, he just stared at me, his face a total blank. I never expected it. He had this adorable, cherubic face, but the words that came out of his mouth sent a shiver down my spine. The kid grabbed my hand, looked up at me with a grin, and said, "You look so familiar. Mister, you'd be the perfect wife for my daddy." He looked so serious that I just found it funny. I didn't take him seriously. "You're this big and your dad doesn't have a wife yet?" The kid pouted and mumbled, "Daddy says his wife ran away." Hearing that, a wave of guilt washed over me, and I couldn't meet the kid's eyes. Because a few years ago, I'd also run away. I took off right after the baby was born. Come to think of it, if the Spencers had raised that child well, he'd be about this age by now. I sized up the kid in front of me, then glanced at the bodyguards and nannies surrounding him. A strange premonition started to creep in. My breath hitched. I asked cautiously, "Hey kid, what's your name?" The kid blinked. "My name's Noah Spencer." What a coincidence. His last name was Spencer, too. Looking at his handsome little face, he seemed more and more familiar. But the more I thought about it, the more impossible it seemed. The Spencers would rather see me dead in the projects. They'd never let the child get anywhere near me. Seeing me zone out, Noah hugged my leg and gave me a sales pitch. "Mister, my daddy's a top-tier alpha. He's handsome and super rich. Just come with me. Our family will definitely make it worth your while." My eyelid twitched as he described his dad. I rejected him without a second thought. Unexpectedly, Noah's lip quivered, his eyes welling up. The bodyguards immediately surrounded me. "What do you think you're doing?" The nanny scooped Noah into her arms. He gave me a sweet smile. "Taking you home with me, of course." The closer we got, the more familiar everything looked. My eye was twitching like crazy. I tried to reason with Noah in a soft voice. "Sweetie, just let me go. I'm just a beta with no pheromones. How could I possibly be a match for your top-tier alpha dad? How about this? Tell me what kind of omega your dad likes, and I'll help him find one. Okay?" Noah just shook his head at me. "I want you. You look exactly like the person in the picture." Crap. Couldn't be that much of a coincidence, could it? A growing sense of unease washed over me. I wanted to jump out of the car, but the bodyguards watched me like a hawk the whole way, and the kid never took his eyes off me. I had no choice but to let them drag me in despair to a mansion. The familiar decor only made me more anxious. Noah trotted around on his little legs, searching everywhere. "Where's my daddy?" "The master is in his room." The butler replied, his eyes landing on me. Our eyes met and we both froze. A second later, the butler and Noah spoke at the same time. "Mr. Cross, you take him to Daddy's room." Before I could react, the bodyguards basically bundled me up and tossed me into a pitch-black room. A deep, hoarse voice called out, "Who's there?" I opened my mouth, but the overwhelming, invisible pheromones choked the sound in my throat. A tall figure approached, radiating scorching heat. Our bodies pressed together, his hot breath ghosting across the back of my neck. On instinct, I tilted my head down to give him better access. But the sharp pain never came. Confused, I turned and looked up, right into the alpha's dark, heavy eyes. Leo? My sixth sense hadn't lied. It really was Adrian Spencer. For years ago, I stumbled upon Adrian Spencer on my way home. He'd been dosed with an inducer, and his pheromones were out of control. A few empty suppressants were scattered at his feet. But suppressants are useless against a rut brought on by an inducer. If anything, they just made it worse, leaving him flushed and nearly out of his mind. The moment he saw me, he lunged like a starving animal, pinning me tightly in his arms. His nose brushed against the back of my neck as he sniffed me frantically. I fought back the ticklish sensation with no intention of struggling. I'd seen him on TV. Adrian Spencer, the eldest son of New York's Spencer family, handsome and loaded. Now, with him lost in his rut, my mind started racing. If I helped him through his rut, I could probably make a lot of money, right? I imagined the scene. After a wild night, I'd wake up to Adrian slapping a check on my face and telling me to get lost. A strange sensation on my chest snapped me back to reality. I looked down in disbelief at the head buried in my chest. What are you doing? I frantically pushed him away and pulled down my shirt, which he'd shoved up to my chest. Adrian frowned in annoyance, his hand slipping right past my waistband. A jolt went through me. I grabbed his hand and tried to negotiate. Wait, hold on. See, can we get a room and continue there? I don't want to do this here. People could walk by at any moment. I'm not into public displays. Adrian considered it for a moment, then agreed. We half-carried, half-dragged each other to a nearby hotel. The second we were inside, I was even more impatient than he was, pushing him onto the bed and kissing him sloppily all over. Soon, Adrian flipped the script, turning from passive to aggressive, and he was ferocious. He slammed into me so hard my breath hitched and my voice broke into shattered pieces. He left bites all over my body. There wasn't a single inch of unmarked skin, especially the back of my neck. The guy treated me like an omega, biting the soft skin over and over, leaving a deep mark. For days I was in a daze, just a toy for him to play with in countless ways. When I finally came to my senses and opened my eyes, Adrian was just stepping out of the bathroom. Our eyes met. Adrian frowned, his expression sour. I got the hint and quickly said, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone what happened these past few days." Adrian stared at me for a long moment. "You're a beta?" I nodded, rubbing my hands together, eagerly waiting for him to slap that hush money check in my palm. I waited and waited, but Adrian showed no signs of producing a check. This wasn't right. Rich people can't be this cheap, can they? Or was it that he wasn't afraid of me telling people we'd been screwing for days? Even if he wasn't scared, I didn't want anyone else to know. I ground my teeth and decided to play the victim. I gave him an exaggerated, sob-story version of what happened after I found him. I even claimed I'd spent my life savings on the best room in the hotel. Who knew that after hearing my tale, Adrian would just give me a wry smile and say, "Simple. I'll pay you back with my body." What? Were we really playing for keeps? And just like that, I became Adrian Spencer's boyfriend. He offered me 20 grand a month to help him deal with his family. For a money lover like me, there was no way I could refuse. So I eagerly packed my bags and moved in with him. A few months in, I started to have regrets. I was supposed to be his beard, but we were doing everything a real couple would, and then some. I felt like we weren't exactly compatible in that department. Adrian had way too much stamina. He was relentless, and it took forever. As a beta, going up against a top-tier alpha like him was just too much for me. I wished we could just get it over with in a few minutes. But Adrian never granted my wish. After another marathon session, I was teary-eyed and tentatively suggested, "Maybe we should end this. I think an alpha really belongs with an omega." I was slowly realizing that a beta shouldn't bite off more than they can chew. Adrian's hand tightened on my waist as he asked casually, "And what relationship is that?" The question made my brain short-circuit. After a moment, I answered hesitantly, "A contract? At least you haven't forgotten that." Adrian scoffed, pushing my legs apart with his knee and pressing down on me. "I'm the one paying, you're the one getting paid. Only I get to decide when it's over." As he spoke, his pheromones instantly enveloped me, a wave of pleasure flooding my mind. I cried out in protest, trying to shrink away, but he just grabbed my ankles and dragged me right back, forced to accept every sensation he brought me. One weekend, Adrian took me to a family dinner. The moment we walked in, all the Spencers stared at me with varying expressions of disdain. "Adrian, it's not my place to say," Mrs. Spencer began, her eyes sweeping over me dismissively. "Finding a beta for a bit of fun is one thing, but you're actually thinking of marrying him? You're the Spencer heir. Aren't you ashamed to be mixing with lowlifes from the projects?" Her words dropped the temperature in the room by several degrees. I just kept my head down and ate, my expression unchanged. I'd fought my way out of the projects. I'd grown a thick skin a long time ago. Compared to being broke, passive-aggressive comments like that couldn't hurt me. Adrian spoke, his voice cold and hard. "The person I choose is not up for debate." In the middle of my busy eating, I tilted my head and nodded in agreement. Mrs. Spencer's face darkened, and her voice rose considerably. I could accept you finding some low-class omega, but you had to pick a beta. A beta has no pheromones, can't soothe you during your ruts, and certainly can't carry a child. What's the use of marrying one? You're the Spencer heir, you can't possibly… My face went pale as the smell of fish made me gag. Suddenly, all eyes were on me. Adrian grabbed my hand and frowned at the butler. Get the doctor. The family doctor drew my blood and ran a few simple tests. To everyone's surprise, the beta who Mrs. Spencer had just declared barren, was pregnant. Because of the pregnancy, the Spencers set aside their prejudice against me. But it was only temporary. Before my due date, Mrs. Spencer came to see me. Leo, you're a smart boy, she said, her tone gentle but her eyes completely cold. A beta with no pheromones can never truly compare to an omega. Have the baby, take the money, and leave. It's better for both of us. Otherwise, you'll walk away with nothing. I wavered. When I first lucked into Adrian, all I wanted was to score some cash. I never planned on getting too involved. He suggested I act as his beard. And since I'd do anything for money, I agreed. All this time had passed. I'd made enough money, and I was getting tired of being his contract boyfriend. Besides, I couldn't fight against the Spencer family's power. If they forbade something, how could I possibly defy them? As it turned out, I really couldn't go against them. After the baby was born, Mrs. Spencer found me again. Leo, you've served your purpose. She gave me a generous sum of money and told me to leave with her people. I'd gone through hell to have this baby, and the Spencers couldn't wait to kick me out. Thinking it over, I was too pissed off to let it go. So I looted all of Adrian's valuables as compensation for having his child. But when it was actually time to leave, my chest felt tight and heavy. I took a deep breath and decided not to leave with the people she'd arranged. I chose to stay in New York City. Even so, in all these years, I never heard a single word about Adrian or the child. My thoughts slowly returned, and my whole body ached. The lights were off and the curtains were drawn, making the room too dark to see. All I could clearly sense were the alpha pheromones floating in the air. My wrists and ankles felt strangely heavy. With a cold touch, I moved them slightly. The clatter of chains echoed in my ears, making me freeze on the spot. In disbelief, I tried moving again. The only response was the sound of clashing metal, making my heart seize. I started to struggle violently. A hand shot out from beside me, scorching hot, and pinned me down. Don't move. Adrian gripped my jaw, forcing me to turn and face him. Once my eyes adjusted to the dark, I could just make out his face, and my gaze locked with his deep eyes. He frowned, his tone harsh. Leo, what do you think you're doing? That was my line. My relationship with him had been over for years. Getting kidnapped off the street by that kid Noah and his bodyguards was one thing. But what right did Adrian have to lock me up here? He looked at me, annoyed. Why aren't you talking? With his fingers squeezing my cheeks, I could barely open my mouth. How was I supposed to speak? I craned my neck and glared at him, mumbling for him to let go. Adrian released me, and his pheromones pressed down like a physical weight. It was so intense that even I, a beta, found it hard to breathe. What do I think I'm doing? That's what I should be asking you. Thinking about this absurd kidnapping made me laugh with rage. I yanked at my wrists, the chains rattling loudly. Adrian, we were done a long time ago. What gives you the right to chain me up? Done? Adrian let out a low laugh, his body pressing down heavily on mine. I told you from the start. The one who pays is the one who gets to say when it's over. You stole my money and my things, ditched me and our son without a trace, and now you're telling me we're done. In your dreams, Leo. But your mother, I wanted to defend myself. But the words were cut off as his lips crashed down on mine. The wet, punishing kiss was an invasion, a storm conquering the territory of my mouth. I helplessly tried to clamp my legs together, but the chains held me fast, forcing me to yield to him. My struggles and curses were shattered by his thrusts, leaving only broken whimpers. After 4 years, I was once again reminded of a profound truth. Physically, there is an insurmountable gap between a beta and a top-tier alpha. When everything finally calmed down, I was like a fish out of water, gasping for air, not wanting to move even a finger. Adrian propped himself up above me, contentedly squeezing and stroking me. Still thinking of running? After what he'd just put me through, of course I still wanted to run. But facing him now, I didn't dare say it. I could only bite the bullet and say, I won't run again. Fighting him head-on only hurt me. It was better to placate him for now. Adrian stared at me for a long moment, then leaned down and gave me a gentle kiss. When he pulled away, he seemed pleased with my obedience. His pheromones softened, losing their oppressive edge. Feeling the stickiness on my skin, and sensing he was in a good mood, I tentatively asked, Can you take these off first? I want to take a shower. Adrian didn't budge. We can shower like this. Frustrated, I turned my face away, silently refusing to engage with him anymore. Adrian chuckled, then leaned down and undid the humiliating chains before carrying me into the bathroom. The moment we were inside, I regretted asking for a shower. I was exhausted and half asleep. All I remember is the sound of running water going on for a long time before it finally stopped. The next day, I was woken by an intense stare. I opened my eyes to see Noah perched by the bed, his little hand cupping his chin, blinking at me. The moment our eyes met, he smiled. You're finally awake. The sun's already setting. You slept all day, mister. As if afraid I wouldn't believe him, he pattered over to the window and pulled open the curtains to show me the evening sky outside. I slept that long? Adrian, that damn animal. Just then, Noah ran back. I swallowed the curse that was on the tip of my tongue. It was my first time having a kid around. I'd almost forgotten not to swear. Noah, showing no shyness at all, scrambled onto the bed and sat next to me. A jolt went through me. I quickly checked my arms and legs, making sure there were no kid-unfriendly chains still attached. After a thorough check, I breathed a sigh of relief. Not only were there no chains, but I was also wearing pajamas. Adrian wasn't that much of a monster. Turning my head, I looked at Noah's little face, a perfect copy of Adrian's, and my heart filled with a mix of emotions. I'd spent 3 years hiding out in New York City, even though I made time every day to wander around the area near the Spencer Corp building. I never once ran into Adrian, let alone my own son, whose name and face I didn't even know. 3 years and I'd found nothing. I was planning to go back to the projects this weekend. I never thought that before I left, I'd be found by the very kid I gave birth to. He was already up to my waist, but his schemes were larger than life. I hadn't even been able to recognize him, but he'd just straight up ordered his bodyguards to bring me back. I felt a pang of wistfulness, but it also felt like it was meant to be. I just knew the bond between me and my son wasn't so shallow that we'd never see each other again. Are you hungry? Noah asked, curiously touching my stomach. Daddy said you were exhausted and that I shouldn't bother you. You're awake now, so this doesn't count as bothering, right? My throat was still a little hoarse. It's not a bother. I struggled out of bed and quickly washed up. Noah eagerly pulled me downstairs. Grandpa Butler had Mrs. Lee make lots of yummy food. Come and try it. I was stuffed after dinner, so I wandered around the mansion. 3 years had passed. Nothing much had changed. It was more or less the same as before. There were just fewer of my things around, and a lot more kid stuff. But that was normal. For the past few years, the most important thing to the Spencer family was their little treasure, Noah. The belongings of an insignificant person like me naturally didn't need to be kept. Maybe it was the novelty of it all, but Noah stuck to me like a little shadow. Wherever I went, he followed. Occasionally, he'd point things out around the house, telling me stories about him and Adrian. After the tour, I played with toys with Noah for a while, but our quiet, sweet time didn't last long. Adrian came home. As his pheromones grew stronger, I instinctively tensed up, feeling uneasy all over. Noah was the opposite. Yelling "Daddy," he bounced into Adrian's arms. Adrian swept the boy up and nuzzled his cheek. He radiated such a doting, husbandly vibe that I couldn't look away. Adrian glanced at me. I quickly looked away, fiddling with the building blocks in my hands, while my ears perked up to listen to the father and son. Adrian asked softly, "What did you and Leo do today?" Noah had an excellent memory and spoke clearly. He recounted everything that had happened since I woke up, in painstaking detail. A sweat broke out on my back as I belatedly realized what was happening. Adrian was using our son as a little spy, and I hadn't even noticed, happily playing along with the kid. Noah puffed out his little chest, practically begging for praise. Me and Mr. were both very good. We didn't cause any trouble for Daddy. Then you get ice cream as a reward. Noah's mouth dropped open in surprise, and he scrambled downstairs to ask the butler for his ice cream, leaving me to face Adrian. Alone. Adrian walked toward me step by step. As the alpha pheromones grew thicker, I swallowed hard and couldn't help but back away. I kept retreating until I was cornered, my back against the wall, on the verge of tears. Adrian cupped my chin, forcing me to look up at him. How did you get along with Noah today? Is there anything you want to say to me? I forced a smile and said with genuine feeling, You've raised him really well. He's so well-behaved and cute. If I had secretly taken Noah with me back then, he might not have grown up so healthy and happy. Adrian frowned, dissatisfied. Is that all? What else could there be? Tell him to give the child back to me and let us go? If I said that, Adrian would probably torture me to death. Adrian stared at me for a moment, then a corner of his mouth twitched into a sudden smile. Fine. In that case, let's settle the debt you owe me. My eyes widened in confusion. What debt? I didn't know I owed him anything. Then, Adrian slapped a stack of photos in front of me. They were all pictures of me, taken secretly after I'd left the Spencers, selling off Adrian's valuables on the black market. Every single photo clearly captured my face. A sense of crisis washed over me. So, right after I left the Spencer family, Adrian had been tracking my movements. I thought I'd been so stealthy that no one had found out, that I wouldn't have to worry about getting caught for taking the money. So this is what he was waiting for. Meeting his dark gaze, my heart pounded like a drum, and I nervously swallowed. That's, a misunderstanding. Is it? Adrian looked through the photos one by one. I didn't take these. My mother's people did. It was Mrs. Spencer. So, Adrian himself didn't know where I was back then? Noticing the confusion in my eyes, Adrian ignored it. He turned and pulled out a detailed list, cataloged every item I'd taken, along with its converted cash value. The long string of zeros after the numbers made my head spin. Had I really spent that much money in 3 years? Either pay it back, Adrian said slowly, or pay with your body. Leo, I won't force you this time. You choose. How was this not forcing me? I spent most of that money. The cost of living in New York City is high, and I had to send money back to my family in the projects from time to time. Even after selling off so many valuables over the years, I hadn't been able to save much. Where was I supposed to get that kind of money now? After a long, silent standoff, I was forced to choose the latter, resigning myself to staying with the Spencers. Just like before, working off the debt 1 month for every $20,000. My days back at the Spencer mansion were harder than I'd imagined. Not materially, but psychologically and physically. Adrian wasn't exactly bad to me. My food, clothes, and daily needs were all the best, just like before. But he wasn't exactly good to me either. He wasn't gentle with me like he was years ago. Now he was always vigilant, his eyes full of scrutiny and control, as if he were sizing up a piece of property. It made me uncomfortable, and it was as if he was determined to collect the past few years' worth of missed payments, with interest, pulling me into his bed night after night. When he was too rough at night, I couldn't help but beg for mercy. Adrian would grip my waist, his tone dripping with sarcastic displeasure. Aren't you great at running? You ran for 3 years straight. We've only just started, and you can't take it already? His words left me speechless. All I could do was bite down on the pillow and cry silent tears. Adrian would lean over and hold me, kissing away the tears at the corners of my eyes. What are you crying for? Even Noah doesn't cry as much as you do. I shook my head. A sense of grievance had begun to build up in my heart. I didn't even know when. One weekend, the weather turned suddenly, with thunder and lightning. Noah was scared and begged me to sleep with him. I would have loved nothing more than to go to the kids' room and sleep with him. But the decision wasn't mine to make. The two of us, one big and one small, sat on the bed and stared at Adrian as he came out of the bathroom. We held a silent staring contest, waiting for his response. After a moment, Adrian relented and agreed. I grabbed my pillow with one hand, hoisted Noah over my shoulder with the other, and dashed to the kids' room. Listening to the thunder boom outside, Noah snuggled into my arms and asked, "Mister, are you going to be my daddy from now on?" Silly baby. I'm already your daddy. But I didn't say it out loud. I didn't know why Adrian hadn't told him I was his other father. If I told him now, he probably wouldn't believe me anyway. Daddy really likes you. Noah looked at me, his little face serious, with a hint of melancholy. Daddy had someone he liked a lot before. He liked him so much that he wouldn't even go on blind dates with Omegas when Grandma told him to. He used to look at that person's picture every night before going to sleep. He leaned in conspiratorially and whispered, I peeked at that picture once. Mister, you look a lot like the person in the picture, that's why I brought you back. Now that you're here, Daddy doesn't look at the picture anymore. No way. I thought Noah was just kidding when he said I looked like the person in the picture. I didn't think Adrian was actually using me as a replacement. No wonder it was so easy when I first found him. And after I got pregnant with Noah, he immediately wanted me to have the baby. So it was all because I had the face of a stand-in. And here I was, thinking Adrian actually liked me that much, that it had to be me. Looking at Noah, replaying his words in my head, my chest ached and my eyes burned. The thought of running away began to grow wildly once again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I quickly packed some light, valuable items, ready to bolt at any moment. Maybe even fate was on my side, tired of seeing my predicament. Adrian happened to be incredibly busy during this period, leaving early and coming home late. On top of that, I'd been so obedient lately that the household staff had relaxed their guard. When dinner time came, Adrian called. I won't be back for dinner tonight, Leo. You and Noah don't have to wait for me. Okay, I replied. My mind was already racing, plotting the best way to sneak out of the mansion. After dinner, the servants went to rest. I grabbed my bag and tiptoed out of the room. A soft, childish voice sounded from behind me. Where are you going, mister? I jumped, my whole body trembling. I spun around to see Noah in his pajamas, hugging a small stuffed animal, rubbing his eyes as he stood a few feet away. Crap. I'd almost forgotten I had a little spy at home watching me for Adrian. I rushed over and clamped my hand over his mouth to stop him from alerting anyone else. Shoo, don't yell. Noah blinked his big eyes and nodded. I let go, and he immediately whispered, Are you leaving? Looking at his tender little face, my heart was a mess of emotions. I gave a muffled aha. Noah's mouth trembled, his voice tinged with hurt. Didn't you come here to be my daddy? Why can't you stay? I really like you. His dejected tone made my heart melt into a puddle. But I hardened it and said, I can't. I have to go. I wasn't going to stay here and be a replacement. What if the real person came back? Would I have to watch my own son sweetly call someone else daddy? The thought was like a knife to the heart. Where are you going, mister? I don't know yet. Anywhere. Just to wander around. Noah looked up, his eyes shining, and said something shocking. Then take me with you. I froze. What? I want to wander around too. Just take me with you. Noah hugged my leg, looking even more excited than I was, and urged me on. Let's go, mister. Daddy will be back if we wait any longer. That was a good reminder. Adrian could be back any minute. I didn't have time to think. I looked down at Noah clinging to my leg. He's my son. What's wrong with me taking him? Adrian's had him for years. It's my turn to raise him. We got out of the mansion. Noah and I were laughing and talking, hand in hand, discussing where we should go first. Suddenly, blinding headlights shone directly on us. A black van screeched to a halt in front of us. Noah mumbled, It's Daddy's car. The door slid open and Adrian stepped out. He was shrouded in the night's chill, carrying the faint scent of alcohol and pheromones. His eyes swept over the bag in my hand, then settled on me and Noah. His face instantly turned dark enough to drip water. Leo, he said, his voice low and hoarse, tinged with an undeniable rage. What are you doing now? My scalp tingled. I instinctively hid the bag behind my back. Noah was startled by Adrian's expression and quickly hid behind me. After a moment's thought, he poked his head out from behind me and said anxiously, Daddy, don't be mad. Mister didn't do anything. I was the one who begged him to take me out to play. We weren't trying to leave you. Oh wow, that's my kid. Even at a time like this, he was stepping up to take all the blame. Just as I was getting all weepy and touched by Noah, Adrian snatched the bag from my hand and tossed it to someone behind him. He completely ignored his son's words, strode forward, and threw me over his shoulder without any warning. Noah stared, dumbfounded, looking up at us. Being stared at like that, I was mortified and furious, and quickly covered my face. Adrian's shoulder was digging painfully into my stomach. I struggled. "Adrian, put me down." Adrian paid no attention, turning his head to tell the person behind him, "Take the young master back." Noah was small and easily picked up and carried away. As he was being taken, he called out to me pitifully, "Mister, I can't save you now." He carried me all the way back to the bedroom and threw me heavily onto the big bed. Adrian locked the door behind him, loosened his tie, and looked down at me. Invisible alpha pheromones swept toward me, potent enough to make even a beta like me feel overwhelmed. Adrian loomed over me, his alcohol-tinged breath on my face. "Leo, why can't you ever learn? Why are you always trying to leave?" Maybe it was the alcohol, but he was off tonight. His intense gaze was so fierce it looked like he wanted to devour me. I was trapped between the bed and his body, with nowhere to run. All my pent-up grievances finally exploded. "What do you think it's about?" "Of course it's because I don't want to be a replacement." I furiously pushed against him, but he didn't budge. "Adrian, look at me. I'm Leo, not someone else. Why are you so desperate to keep me here? Who do I look like?" Adrian's movements stopped abruptly. His brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. His tone was strange as he answered my question with one of his own. "A replacement?" "Yes." I glared at him, my eyes red. "You don't have to pretend with me. Noah told me everything. You look at a picture every night before you can sleep. I just happen to look like the person in that picture. You can't have the real thing, so you use me as a substitute, right? When you finally get them, do I have to watch the son I gave birth to call someone else daddy? I can't do it, Adrian. I'm done playing." After letting it all out in one breath, my chest heaved, and tears streamed down my face against my will. Adrian watched me in silence, his expression unreadably complex. After a long moment, he sighed softly, a bitter smile on his lips as he said through gritted teeth, "Leo, what on earth goes on in that head of yours all day?" He raised his hand and roughly wiped the tears from my face, the gesture anything but gentle. "How can you possibly believe the things a kid Noah's age says?" I mumbled back, "Why shouldn't I believe him? What reason would a little kid have to lie to me?" "The person in the photo," he said, forcing the words out one by one, "is you." I froze, staring at him blankly. "And it's not just one photo." Adrian pulled open the nightstand drawer, took out a photo album, and opened it for me to see. "See clearly now?" Flipping through it, every page was filled with photos of me. There were pictures from when I first arrived at his house, looking dazed. Pictures of me exhausted in bed after he'd worn me out, and pictures of me with a big pregnant belly. "For all these years, I couldn't find you, so this album was all I had to get by. And now you're telling me I'm using you as a replacement?" The one who felt wronged was now the alpha in front of me. Adrian's eyes were red. He gave a self-deprecating laugh and said, "Leo, in all these years, who else has been in my life besides you?" Adrian's words exploded in my mind like a thunderclap. My eyes widened in disbelief, unable to process what he'd just said. "I'm not a replacement. The photos Adrian looked at were of me, and he'd been looking for me for years." My mouth hung open, tears still clinging to my eyelashes, my entire being in a state of shock. "You're just trying to trick me, aren't you?" I said, my voice trembling as I lowered my gaze. "I went to your company's neighborhood every single day, hoping for a chance encounter. For 3 years, I never once ran into you or the baby. If it wasn't Adrian doing it on purpose, how could I have possibly gone 3 years without seeing them once?" Adrian wiped away my tears with the pad of his thumb and explained softly, "It was my mother. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't have hidden so well that I couldn't find you." Hearing that, the knot of resentment in my chest loosened slightly. Mrs. Spencer again. If it weren't for her back then, maybe I wouldn't have been forced to leave Adrian and Noah. After a moment's hesitation, I fiddled with Adrian's fingers and decided to briefly explain that my running away hadn't been voluntary. "Mrs. Spencer had forced me." "Yeah, I know. The moment I got back to the hospital room and you were gone, I started looking for you. But back then, she had more power than I did. I couldn't find you and bring you back in time." Adrian tightened his arms, pulling me into his embrace. So for the past 3 years, I've worked to take over the entire Spencer family. She can't interfere in my life anymore. As it happens, her health hasn't been great lately. I've sent her to a sanatorium. It's the perfect place for her to rest long-term. We can let her come back when she finally accepts us being together. His tone was calm, but it held an unshakable resolve. The words sent a slight tremor through my heart. The last bit of resentment I held because of Mrs. Spencer seemed to dissipate with this news. She could no longer force me to leave, no longer separate me from my child. I leaned against Adrian's chest, feeling the beat of his heart and his warmth, and my tense body slowly began to relax. Adrian lowered his head, and a light kiss landed on my lips. He was about to deepen it, when there was a sudden thump-thump-thump at the bedroom door. Noah's voice came from outside, aggrieved but also a little defiant. "Daddy, you scared me outside. I can't sleep. Can you lend me Mr. to sleep with me?" Adrian took a deep breath, suppressing his rising desire. He strode over to the door and yanked it open. Noah stood at the door, hugging a small pillow, his feet bare. Meeting Adrian's displeased, unfulfilled expression, he pouted and reluctantly called out, "Daddy," before looking past him at me with longing eyes. Adrian snatched him up and said irritably, "Get in here and sleep, you little dad blocker." Noah dangled in the air, held by the back of his collar, but didn't struggle. He just blinked his big eyes and looked at me pitifully. Adrian carried him to the bed and dropped him into my arms, his tone clipped. "Noah, do you have any idea that, because of you, the husband I almost had is gone again?" Noah shook his head, not understanding, and mumbled, "I don't know." He hugged my waist tightly, burying his face in my chest, and said in a muffled voice, "Mister, don't go. I'm scared." I stroked his little face and comforted him. "Don't worry, I'm not going." Noah looked at me, then turned his head to look at Adrian, as if silently asking him something. Adrian nodded. Noah pursed his lips, then gave a shy, sweet smile and whispered in my ear, "Daddy." I froze on the spot. "Baby, I'm Daddy," I said one word at a time, my heart beating like crazy. "I'm back, and I'm not leaving again. Okay, we'll never be separated again, Daddy." Noah gave my cheek a satisfied kiss. He was so sleepy that he found a comfortable position in my arms and quickly drifted off to sleep, leaving me holding him tightly, unable to get enough of looking at him. Finally, Adrian couldn't take it anymore and tried to take him from me. "He's not going to disappear. He's heavy as a little pig, your arms will get tired." It was true that sleeping comfortably was important. I let him take Noah and asked softly, "When did you tell him?" "He's always known." I looked at my sleeping son in surprise. So Noah had known all along, and he was willing to play along and pretend he didn't. But thinking about it, it made sense. If he hadn't known, why would he have unhesitatingly had me kidnapped and brought here after running into me on the street? After tucking Noah in, Adrian turned and wrapped his arms around me again. In the dim light, his large hand stroked my back soothingly, his voice tinged with helplessness. When he was little, he kept asking where you went. I couldn't lie to him, so I just told him you'd left. He took that to mean, you didn't want us. I brought you here this time because I was originally going to take him with me to find you, but I unexpectedly went into a rut, so he took the chance to run out and find you himself. He was so happy after we brought you back, but he was also afraid you'd be upset, so he only dared to call you Mister. So, that's why. I scooted closer to Noah, looking at his peaceful, sleeping face, and my heart felt like it was stuffed with cotton, all soft and warm. I wanted to snatch him up and cuddle him until I got my fix, but I was afraid of waking him, so I had to resist. Beside me, Adrian started getting inexplicably jealous, muttering sullenly, "You can get your fix with me." My cheeks flushed and I shot him a glare. "The kid's right here. Can you be serious?" Adrian, completely unabashed, raised an eyebrow. "What's not serious about that? Weren't you just saying you wanted to get a few good sniffs of Noah?" I was at a loss for words. "You still haven't paid off your debt to me." Adrian scooped me up by the waist and strode toward the bathroom. "Stop looking at Noah. Time to pay your debts first." The sound of trickling water filled the bathroom. I clung to his shoulders, accepting everything he gave me. In a daze, I made sure to say deliberately, "Fine. I'll leave as soon as the debt is paid." Adrian's movements paused, And then he said fiercely, "Don't even think about it." I smiled and tilted my head up to kiss him. This time, no one was ever going to make me leave.